Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to introduce you to today's speaker. I'll give a brief introduction first. Dr. Anantha Jyothi is the principal at Rishi Valley School. After completing her PhD in English, Anantha Jyothi joined Rishi Valley School as a teacher. She was familiar with Krishnamurti's philosophy, but she was not really prepared for what unfolded in the next phase of her life. Teaching in Rishi Valley is not just a livelihood for her, but a way of life. She took a short break from Rishi Valley, and in this interim period, she did a teacher's training in the UK and taught there briefly. Eventually, like a hummingbird, she returned to Rishi Valley School, where she has been teaching since. So, the title of today's webinar is Relevance of Krishnamurti in the Age of Artificial Intelligence. So, I'll ask Dr. Anantha Jyothi to begin her webinar, and I'll just share the screen. Sorry, just bear with us.
Maybe I'll just begin.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. Thank you, participants, for coming here on a Saturday afternoon to take part in this conversation. When I chose the topic, relevance of Krishnamurti in the age of AI, I did have some doubts because one never knows Krishnamurti fully. One is always in the process of learning. And about AI, I know even less. I'm not even a technology person. But the more I worked on it, I thought that this is a conversation I would like to have. So welcome to all the participants today. And I'll just wait for Tanush to share his screen.
Okay, so just give me a second.
Yes, take your time.
Right. Okay, yeah,
Yes.
I'll just.
Thank you. So I would just like to open with the context why I chose this topic. We had a student staff discussion recently, and we were talking about meditation, and this was a part of the passage from Mind Without Measure, which we were actually discussing, where Krishnamurti says, meditation implies awareness of the earth, the beauty of earth, the dead leaf, the dying dog, to be aware of your environment, to be aware of the beauty of the wind among the leaves, to be aware of your thoughts, your feelings, that is, to be aware without choice, just to be aware. Now, the discussion was going on well when two questions came up from the students. And one of the questions, like you can see on the screen, was, this may have made sense in the past. I do not know if there is much relevance of these words in our current daily life. So it set me thinking, because in my mind, it was very clear that today, more than ever, we need to be looking at these things. But if the student has asked this question, possibly he was coming from a place that our life is so fast-paced and you're trying to slow us down. Does it have any relevance? Then there was another question also, and sometimes, occasionally, we come across this question that when you come from a place of privilege, it is easy to say these things. When I say these things, it is easy to talk about Krishnamurti. But for the one who is deprived of what relevance are these words, almost implying that Krishnamurti is a kind of luxury that only some people can discuss about, and that it does not really touch their real life or their daily life. I had difficulty with both the premises, and time again, I thought we need to answer these questions. And that is what today's conversation is about. The next slide, please. Around this time, I was also following a lot of my own research, I would say, or it's more like getting to know about these subjects. Anjana Susarla is a long associate. I've not met her for 30 years, but I very keenly follow all her articles. And she's a professor in the Michigan State University, professor of responsible AI. Even recently, there was a seminar, and it was quite an eye opener. Joy, I don't know how that is pronounced, so I'll just call her Joy. I've been following her articles also. Some of the topics that have been coming up are the strange and wondrous world of mitigating bias through AI. So it talks about the metrics and the moral hazard, algorithmic bias and responsible AI, breaking the bias, why gender matters in standards, the new algorithmic divide that we are facing. But I would like to have a disclaimer here. I'm not really opening up this conversation to look at the pros and cons of AI. I think a lot has been said. And if I touch upon some of the problematic areas, it does not mean that I'm not aware of the kind of service that AI does to humanity in medical research. No, that is not the point at all. The point today is that even in this age of AI, where some of the students, for example, thought that it was Krishnamurti was no longer relevant, I just want to open up this conversation to explore how Krishnamurti is relevant even today, even in this age of AI. So it's not so much about AI, but it is about our current times. At a glance, as a teacher, when we look at Krishnamurti and AI, I can straight away see where the glaring differences are. And therefore, this is my premise. Krishnamurti says that in so many of his talks, he says that he wants to set mankind unconditionally free. It's very liberated. Whereas in AI, every individual is defined by an algorithm, and that is very inhibitive. Krishnamurti says truth cannot be organized. The entire truth in AI is organized truth. Somebody has organized it there already. Further, intelligence is totally impersonal. It does not belong to any group, to any person, to any race, or even to any culture. On the other hand, the data intelligence used in AI models is not neutral. It is a mirror of inequalities from the past. So, in this scenario, I don't see why, for example, what Krishnamurti says here that the world is you and you are the world, realizing that fundamentally, deeply, not romantically, not intellectually, but actually, then we see that our problem is a global problem. And when I say global, I'm not just thinking about it across the globe, but even across ages, even in this age of AI. It is not my problem or your particular problem. It is a human problem. So, how are these words not relevant today? It's a little difficult to understand because I don't know when Krishnamurti said that it was quite relevant. And when we are going through it now, I think it is still very relevant. So, some quick AI facts. Machines are replacing humans in sensitive domains. Uh, don't think of this as a sudden jump that I'm suddenly jumping to some hardcore AI facts. We'll actually explore some of these further, but I just want to lay the ground now, and I'll explain in a little bit. So we can see that whether we like it or not, machines are going to pervade our lives. Recently, during the pandemic, when we did not have our board exams, anyway, the board declared its results and AI was used. So even in a remote place like this, AI touches our lives. So in the large, big world out there, AI is used in almost every domain: criminal justice, medical testing, job marketing, house loaning. And how does this happen? Machine learning algorithms are trained on certain patterns. And if this data, if it contains some bias or historical discrimination, the machine is just going to pick it up. And this bias is now going to happen in a large scale and all our future predictions. And I think today everything is predicted, including the outcome of a football match or a cricket match. So whichever industry we take, whichever, even our results are being predicted. So we rely so much, and all this is based on historical data. And if there is discrimination there, it's going to be duplicated. So I have a small cartoon there about Don Quixote fighting the windmills. I think it takes on a fresh meaning now, or a fresh significance. It's a different kind of mission system that we are fighting now. So next slide, please. So a little clip on what is all this about algorithm and prejudice.
Algorithms are everywhere, from powering our internet search results to taking out the guesswork in our online shopping experience. They are everywhere. We use and trust them each and every day to make countless decisions for us. Despite their seemingly neutral mathematical nature, algorithms, however, aren't necessarily any more objective than humans, because at the end of the day, they are written by people. And this is where the phenomenon of algorithmic bias comes into play. It has many examples. Like when Nikon cameras equipped with the blink detection feature wouldn't snap photos of many of its Asian users because the software thought their eyes were never open. Or how Amazon's Alexa struggles to recognize different accents, and when Google Translate insistently associates certain jobs with certain genders, while translating sentences with gender-neutral pronouns from languages like Turkish, Finnish, and Chinese. In 2015, Google's photo recognition tool mistakenly tagged a photo of two Black people as gorillas. Meanwhile, in the US, a crime predicting algorithm wrongly labeled Black people reoffenders at nearly twice the rate of white people. You see the pattern here? Algorithm bias is rooted in the way AI, artificial intelligence algorithms work, by using what's called machine learning and deep learning, which are both ways in which computers make decisions. Both are simply dependent on data, a huge amount of it, and ultimately the people who feed the data. So let's say we have an image classification algorithm. When you have that algorithm, data like millions of photos correctly labeled as a mug, it will be able to detect other pictures of mugs by comparing it to a set of characteristics it has learned thanks to its database. Similarly, a speech recognition algorithm transcribes words by comparing it to the millions of voice samples that it got earlier. The more labeled data an algorithm is trained on, the better the outcome will be. However, if there's too little data or too much unspecific data, these algorithms will have some blind spots. Here is where the problem of algorithmic bias comes into play. There is generally a person or a group of people who decide what goes into the sample data set the machine learns from. So if the camera company teaches its AI to detect open eyes and has used Caucasians as its main data set, then it's easy to see how the blink detection would be triggered when an Asian person steps into frame. This is an example of the algorithms in question, not trained with enough or related data in order to produce correct results. So what's really important to remember here is that behind every algorithm, there are people. And of course, that person's set of values and beliefs, ethnicity, and cultural intelligence all play a part. These mistakes were perhaps unintentional, but the potential for software products to accidentally adopt some bias is serious. And as more industries which have a deep impact on people's lives turn to technology, and specifically to algorithms in services like school admissions, job applications, insurance rates, and credit scores, a significant question arises. Can algorithms really yield fair results? And whose responsibility is it to ensure that companies and people who create these systems are doing so in the spirit of social equality?
Okay, so that was a quick snapshot of where bias could come in. So we can see that it is a whole new scenario of conditioning that Krishnamurti talks about. And somehow in our minds, we give a lot of importance. I think in my generation, when we were growing up, we gave a lot of importance to the printed word. We thought that the printed word could never be wrong. I think now a lot of importance is given to machines, how machines are neutral. So how can machines go wrong, or how can machines even be biased? So here is a short cartoon by Calvin Hobbes cartoon, where Calvin says that camera never lies, and all he does is he clears one side of his bed, pushes away all the other things, and just fits his neat side of the bed into the frame and says, well, this is how I am. I keep my room very tidy. So I'll just give you a few minutes to read the cartoon. Yes, when we do media studies, for example, we start with this, that a camera never lies, but whose story is the camera telling? Whose story is it? So a machine may not lie, but the person behind the machine may be biased, may be conditioned, and it is that story that is being told every day. So we are often told to stop talking about history, but history will not stop talking about us. So data used in machine algorithms is a mirror of inequalities from the past. And when we use that, I think I've said this before, I would just like to reiterate that we are amplifying these inequalities today. And it has a striking effect on people's lives. We'll see more of this presently. Next, please. So let us now shift to what Krishnamurti is saying and how these two are connected. So when Krishnamurti says that, when you see that class distinction is false, that it creates conflict, creates misery, division between people, when you see the truth of it, that very truth liberates. And now what is unfolding is what I would really like to look into. The very perception of that truth is transformation, is it not? As we are surrounded by so much that is false, perceiving the falseness from moment to moment is transformation. Truth is not cumulative. It is it is from moment to moment. That which is accumulated is memory. And through memory, you can never find truth, for memory is of time. Time being the past, the present, and the future. Time, which is continuity, can never find that which is eternal. Eternal or eternity is not continuity. That which endures is not eternal. Oh, this is a totally new way of looking at things. And just now, when we were looking at AI and the biases, we saw that how everything was accumulating. And this is something that Krishnamurti said long ago, before the advent of AI, that eternity is in the moment, eternity is in the now. Now, when we start looking at algorithm bias, one of the solutions I think they give is that you increase your database. Now, that is not what I am fighting, or that is not what I'm contending at. But this truth that eternity is in the moment and eternity is in the now is what I think is the enduring truth. And it so succinctly puts forth that you cannot rely on memory. And this is a way of looking at the modern age. Now, I think Krishnamurti has already said it so elegantly, so succinctly, and it's almost like an arrow which goes straight into you. But nevertheless, I feel so tempted to share these two small poems, which also shares a similar truth. One is William Blake, to see a world in a grain of sand and a heaven in a wildflower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand and eternity in an hour. The next is a koan, a Japanese form of poem. Enlightenment is like the moon reflected on the water. The moon does not get wet, nor is the water broken. Although its light is wide and great, the moon is reflected even in a puddle an inch wide. The whole moon and the entire sky are reflected in one dewdrop of the grass. I think eternity in an hour and the entire moon in the dewdrop of a grass are the kind of truths that we are talking about. So if we apply this to our current crisis or our modern life today, to see the entirety in the now, I think that is what we need to look into. And that is why Krishnamurti is relevant even today. So one more incursion into what is happening in AI. AI is excellent at recognizing white male faces because that is what they are trained on. And it is notorious at recognizing dark faces, especially if they are women's faces. But this could have serious repercussions. So we'll just watch this video. The Tanuj maybe will not watch the entire thing. We'll just watch for 6 minutes or so, and then we'll stop. Thanks.
Oops.
We'll go to the previous videos.
Sorry. One second.
Hello, I'm Joy, a poet of code on a mission to stop an unseen force that's rising, a force that I call the coded gaze, my term for algorithmic bias. Algorithmic bias, like human bias, results in unfairness. However, algorithms like viruses can spread bias on a massive scale at a rapid pace. Algorithmic bias can also lead to exclusionary experiences and discriminatory practices. Let me show you what I mean. Hi, camera. I've got a face. Can you see my face? No glasses face? You can see her face. What about my face? Well, I've got a mask. Can you see my mask? So how did this happen? Why am I sitting in front of a computer in a white mask trying to be detected by a cheap webcam? Well, when I'm not fighting the coded gaze as a poet of code, I'm a graduate student at the MIT Media Lab. And there I have the opportunity to work on all sorts of whimsical projects, including the Aspire Mirror, a project I did so I could project digital mask onto my reflection. So in the morning, if I wanted to feel powerful, I could put on a lion. If I wanted to be uplifted, I might have a quote. So I used generic facial recognition software to build the system, but found that it was really hard to test it unless if I wore a white mask. Unfortunately, I've run into this issue before. When I was an undergraduate at Georgia Tech studying computer science, I used to work on social robots, and one of my tasks was to get a robot to play peekaboo, a simple turn-taking game where partners cover their face and then uncover it saying peekaboo. The problem is peekaboo doesn't really work if I can't see you, and my robot couldn't see me. But I borrowed my roommate's face to get the project done, submitted the assignment, and figured, you know what, somebody else will solve this problem. Not too long after, I was in Hong Kong for an entrepreneurship competition. The organizers decided to take participants on a tour of local startups. One of the startups had a social robot, and they decided to do a demo. The demo worked on everybody until it got to me, and you can probably guess it. It couldn't detect my face. I asked the developers what was going on, and it turned out we had used the same generic facial recognition software. Halfway around the world, I learned that algorithmic bias can travel as quickly as it takes to download some files off of the internet. So what's going on? Why isn't my face being detected? Well, we have to look at how we give machines sight. Computer vision uses machine learning techniques to do facial recognition. So how this works is you create a training set with examples of faces. This is a face, this is a face, this is not a face. And over time, you can teach a computer how to recognize other faces. However, if the training sets aren't really that diverse, any face that deviates too much from the established norm will be harder to detect, which is what was happening to me. But don't worry, there's some good news. Training sets don't just materialize out of nowhere. We
go on to
actually
the next one.
So there's an opportunity to create full spectrum training sets that reflect a richer portrait of humanity. Now you've seen it in my examples how social robots was how I found out about exclusion with algorithmic bias. But algorithmic bias can also lead to discriminatory practices. Across the US, police departments are starting to use facial recognition software in their crime-fighting arsenal. Georgetown Law published a report showing that 1 in 2 adults in the US, that's 117 million people, have their faces in facial recognition networks. Police departments can currently look at these networks unregulated using algorithms that have not been audited for accuracy. Yet we know facial recognition is not fail-proof, and labeling faces consistently remains a challenge. You might have seen this on Facebook. My friends and I laugh all the time when we see other people mislabel.
Anuj, we can stop, we can go on.
But misidentify.
Yeah, I think the point is made. So we'll go on to the next slide. So this is an argument we are familiar with. So in one of his talks, Krishnamurti talks about living without images. We'll not take this very literally because we've just seen at what imaging does, and we are here talking about without images. I think it's a kind of abstract connect, but while we are making these algorithms, how do we look at things? How are we categorizing things? So when Krishnamurti says that if I am a Hindu born in India, which the speaker is, but he's not a Hindu, suppose the speaker is born in India with all the conditioning that goes on, the conditioning of the race, a particular group with their superstitions, with their religious beliefs, dogmas, rituals, the whole structure of society, he lives with that image, which is his conditioning. I think this is where I would like to connect the two things about how the image can be a very conditioning thing. And however much he may talk about brotherhood, unity, wholeness, those are merely words. They have no actual daily meaning. But if he frees himself from all that imposition, all that conditioning, all that superstitious nonsense, then he is breaking down the image. So when Joy talks about breaking down the image and also making it very inclusive, what she calls the encoding, I think it goes much deeper than that. It is not just spreading the database. It is about this truth that we cannot just break through images by continuing to be what we are. I think it needs a major shift in thinking and not just some more tools to work with or to play with or to improvise on or improve. Unless that inner transformation takes place, only then would we be able to come up with a system that is fair. And I know I almost sound like this person who's repeating the same thing, but that is my premise. And that is why I think Krishnamurti is relevant even today. And as for the other question, if we look at joy, how do we look at it? The student asked, is Krishnamurti only for the privileged? Now, how do we classify Joy in for that matter? Yes, she is in MIT. And when I read this article for the first time and later I saw her video, I was surprised that in a place like MIT, where you have the most advanced technology, or that is what we think when we are here in a place like India, in a remote school like Rishi Valley, that is a very sophisticated place where you have the latest technology, but yet we find that even there, her face was not recognized for the project that she had to do. So is she privileged or is she not privileged? Because she's a black, because she's a woman, has she been completely shut off? So it is not about what machines we make, it is about how have we trained these machines? And for that, the mindset has to change as to how we deal with technology also. I know in some of the talks, Krishnamurti also talks about technology and how it should be used in future. Unfortunately, I've not brought any of that material, but he does talk about it. Next slide. Okay, there is Linus saying that there are three things that he will never talk about: religion, politics, and the great pumpkin, but that is what we are always talking about. And it pervades our lives so much, especially in our media. Every other day we say or read something that is very provocative, very hurting somebody's sentiments, or we are making these statements all the time. So When you call yourself an Indian or a Muslim or a Christian or a European or anything else, you are being violent. And that is what I would like to focus on. Because the moment we are divisive, we become very violent. Do you see why it is violent? Because you're separating yourself from the rest of the mankind. When you separate yourself by a belief, by nationality, by tradition, it breeds violence. So, a man who is seeking to understand violence does not belong to any country, to any religion, to any political party or partial system. He is concerned with the total understanding of mankind. And that is where technology should head. So, if some medical testing is happening that benefits one section of a society, any case, the uh, facilities are not for all. But I'm talking about a much deeper thing. We think that machines are neutral, that they do not differentiate at all. But if technology is to only benefit a few, then what happens? So these are some of the questions that I think are very relevant today. And as we advance into the age of AI, because AI is going to pervade our lives, like we have seen in the earlier video, whether we are buying something or even if I'm sitting in the pandemic and not giving my exam, my life is going to be dictated by AI. And if that is going to be biased, it is not as neutral as we think machines are. So I think the way we think about it should change, because if we are going to be divisive, if we are going to make patterns and if we are going to replicate our patterns, we think that we are getting good results and that it is a fair result. I can give you an example here. Uh, One of our students, she is an excellent student of music. She even got a scholarship to go into a university, quite a prestigious scholarship. But because of the prediction, the way the grades were predicted, she got a 70% in music and almost lost that scholarship. In fact, she did lose that scholarship. And it took a lot of determination on her part. We could not fight the system. We wrote to the council. Uh, and this is not something that is happening in India alone. I'm told that even in Britain, where the Ofqual results were shown, a similar thing had happened. Students were not happy with their results. What happens is the results are based on some kind of an algorithm which takes the past performance into account. Now, in our school, in the last 5 or 6 years, we've not had any music student. So when our student gets the music results, it has shown a null value in her previous years. And therefore, when that is somehow calculated, it looks like it is a fair system, but she has become a victim of the system. And of course, it did have a good end in the sense that she physically took the exam and got 100%. So she had the determination to do that. And she got the scholarship also eventually. But how do we do? The question is, how do we get away from this kind of separation, conditioning, the othering all the time? I think we need to think about it. If it was not all right before, in the current time and age, it could be even more dangerous. It could affect our lives, impact our lives quite strongly. Next slide, please. So, I think it's almost time. I'll try and wind it up. So, I would like to revisit this context and get back to the questions that the student asked, that this may have made sense in the past. I do not know what relevance of it is today, and that Krishnamurti is only for the privileged. So I'm going to show the next slide where again it's Joy. She's also a poet. She almost says the same poem which I think Sojourner Truth 2 centuries ago had said, "Ain't I a woman?" But in the current context, it becomes even more stronger. So let us just listen to her poem.
My heart smiles as I bask in their legacies, knowing their lives have altered many destinies. In her eyes, I see my mother's poise. In her face, I glimpse my auntie's grace. In this case of deja vu, a 19th century question comes into view. In a time when Sojourner Truth asks, ain't I a woman? Today, we pose this question to new powers, making bets on artificial intelligence, hope towers. The Amazonians peek through windows blocking deep blues as faces increment scars. Old birds, new urns, collecting data chronicling our past, often forgetting to deal with gender, race, and class. Again, I ask, ain't I a woman? Face by face, the answers seem uncertain. Young and old, proud icons are dismissed. Can machines ever see my queens as I view them? Can machines ever see our grandmothers as we knew them? Ida B. Wells, data science pioneer, hanging facts, stacking stacks on the lynching of humanity, teaching truths hidden in data, each entry and omission, a person worthy of respect. Shirley Chisholm, unbought and unbossed, the first Black Congresswoman, but not the first to be misunderstood by machines well-versed in data-driven mistakes. Michelle Obama, unabashed and unafraid to wear her crown of history, yet her crown seems a mystery to systems unsure of her hair. A wig, a bouffant, a toupee, maybe not. Are there no words for our braids and our locks? Does relaxed hair and sunny skin make Oprah the first lady? Even for her face, well known, some algorithms fault her, echoing sentiments that strong women are men. We laugh, celebrating the successes of our sisters with serena smiles. No label is worthy of our beauty.
You could go on to the next one, Rana. You go to, yes. So I would like to end with this video. I think what we have discussed all along, I think, is finally comes together in this particular talk of Krishnamurti.
So we're talking about time. The past, going through the present, modifying and continuing. The past is rooted, taken deep roots, and gets through the present through challenges, circumstances, pressures, and so on, but it's still the past. And the future is the past, modified. So the future is now. Over to, yeah? isn't it? If the past, which we are, 2.5 million years or more or less, that's the enormous space between that long past and the present. The present is what we have been and what we are. That's a fact. And that past gets molded, shaped, pressurized, goes through every kind of travail, anxiety, and so on. But that past continues in a different shape or different form, in a different variety of ways, and that becomes the future. So the future is now. Right? Are we together in this, or do we need further explanation? So is there is the whole movement, the past, the present, and the future is contained in the now. Because that is what we are. And that is the whole movement of time. Right? And we're asking, will that movement ever stop? Otherwise, we are bound to this everlasting, time-binding quality of this movement, the past, the present, and the future. And we escape from that question by talking about heaven, hell, the future, away from all this. So, in the now, as you're sitting in the now, all time is contained. The past modifying itself in the present and the future. It is in this cycle, which is the now, can that movement stop for a minute, for a second? Then one asks, what is timelessness? In which time doesn't exist at all. The scientists can give different definition to time. It is a series of movements from second to second to second to second. But that's just a theory, just a acceptance of something which is or maybe in our life. But that's not good enough. If we set aside all theories, all beliefs, the fact is that in our lives, not the time of the sunrise and the sunset, and the new moon and the full moon, the heavens have their own order, their own sense of timelessness. But all that has nothing to do with our actual, daily, boring, lonely, despairing life, and joyous occasionally. So is there an end to time? And then you can ask only then, what is timelessness? You can talk about it. We can discuss. But those discussions, words, theories, have no meaning at all. And what is the relationship of time to thought? The speaker is not asking all these questions. You are asking all these questions. What is the relationship, the actual relationship between thought and time, and the relationship of time, thought to fear, and their relationship to love? This is what we are concerned, right? So what is thought, which is so important, which is so deeply in the deepest valleys of our brain? What is thought in our life? Thought, thinking. Please ask this question of yourself.
Yeah, Tanuj will stop. Yes, I would like to end on that note.
So we're talking about.
Thank you.
So if there are anybody who has a question, I suggest you to type it out in the chat, and then we will respond to your questions. Sorry, I just opened the chat. Now, anybody wants to type in a question can type in. Okay, Madhupranath, your question is not clearly typed out. Maybe you can talk. I'll just give you this, and you can ask your question. No. Okay. Now there are many more questions. I'll just. Oh. Okay, so we can start with this question. Could AI help in exploring the deeper conditioning of men?
I have a quick answer to that. It makes us more aware of our deeper conditioning. But whether it's going to help us overcome it, I think somebody has to take the research in that direction. Machines will do what we make them do. But that is a very simple answer to, I think, a complex question. But the crux of it is that it really accentuates. It's no longer just an abstract thing. It makes it very concrete.
There's another question. How can we connect AI and Krishnamurti together in 2022 to get better results in education? I'm probably assuming better exam results is what is being implied here, rather than better understanding. I'm not sure whether it means better understanding of Krishnamurti.
I know if it is about exams, I think we have crossed that barrier. But to take the question in a different direction, how can it? I think in education, all the time the focus is on the external. Although we have new educational policies both in our country and outside, uh, there is not that much about the inner transformation, the inner growth. I think when that happens, it would spread to all other areas also. So, how can AI help in this? How can Krishnamurti help in this? It's about the way we think, it's about the way the individual is wired, and it's about giving that space to think about it. So, when a question came from the student as to why do we need Krishnamurti today, I think today more than ever we need him because let me take another example. Sometimes when we want to make it like the doomsday, we are always talking about how our life is so controlled by the social media or the data mining that is happening. But who can actually mine the data that is inside you? A machine is a finite thing, and man is an infinite being. And we need to understand our inner being. Can we really mine that data? So I know I have slightly uh, diverted from the actual question, but and the reason I've done that is that we need to be looking inside. We need to be looking at the inner transformation. I think even in that last video that we saw of Krishnaji, he's talking about that. I think in a way he talks about the past, the present, and future being contained in now, but he's also talking about the inner transformation that could happen in that moment. Eternity is a continuity. It's not something that comes from the past.
Yeah, this is a comment from Monali. Thank you for this insightful session. Indeed, class distinction is false, and the entire premise of AI is built on class distinction, which makes JK much more relevant today. I find JK difficult to comprehend at times, but this session made it quite easy to comprehend. Then there is another one. Why is it about AI alone? Anything which is made or created without a liberated mind will always be divided only.
I cannot agree more.
Yeah.
It is just another tool to look at it, that's all.
And then another comment. I remember an interesting conversation on the future of computing as a small group discussion between K and his close associates, narrated in Fire in the Mind. The conversation deepened the inquiry into the nature of human thought and also what it may be to be human. I feel that current research on AI can also deepen our inquiry into mechanical and non-mechanical intelligence.
True.
This is slightly more abstract kind of question. If time is considered as a measurement of change, does now exist?
You're
We
nice.
can,
I know.
yeah. Uh, okay, this may be a little bit more where we can talk. Is being aware of AI and its dangers synonymous to not using it in technology in the modern day?
I don't think. What do you think, Tanuj? Would you like to say something?
Yeah, I don't see. It doesn't. I don't think these are mutually exclusive things. We all use modern technology. I think what we're talking about is awareness that technology sometimes, as you mentioned in your talk, can be looked at as something which is very objective, and it's not actually changing us. But all this, internet and AI and so on is having an impact on us. Many people have talked about the impact of the internet on the human mind and how it's changing us. So I think it's really being aware of that shift that's happening, because we very unconsciously, because of the speed with which it works, the internet and so on, it sort of reduces our awareness. We're not so clear about how it's actually changing our perceptions, how it is shaping us. And I think it's important that, of course, we'll use modern technology, but we have to be highly alert to how it's shaping us also.
I would just like to add one more corollary to that, that it's not only shaping us, it's also targeting us and shaping us. All the time we are being targeted without knowing about it. Every time we type uh, something in the Google engine, I think our data is being collated and processed, and it comes back to us.
Yeah.
So we are being targeted, we are being influenced, we are being manipulated.
Yeah. Is not artificial intelligence a very advanced extension of computers which Kay observed will overtake and outperform a human? What is the alternative left to a human being in such a scenario?
I think the answer is in the question itself.
Yeah.
It can
Yeah.
only work with data,
Yeah. Yeah.
and man is not a sum of data. We are something more than that.
I think here probably the implied is, if computer is able to do all the things that we are doing, then what it is it to be a human being?
Mm.
And I think that question was put squarely. Krishnamurti really posed that question.
Yes.
What does it mean to be a human being, and what does it mean to be a liberated human being? Yeah. Watchfulness of the outer as well as the inner world seems to have some relationship with the inner clarity. Can it be taught in schools?
I think it's a way of living. It cannot be made into a formula and taught. I've been teaching for the last 25 years. I think it permeates into everything we do. I can give this example that perhaps because I've been in an environment like Rishi Valley, where these questions are rife in the air all the time, it does permeate into what we teach. So I may be teaching English or social studies or history or mathematics, like some of my colleagues do. But I think that question is some kind of a consciousness is always there in the background, which sometimes dictate these things. And sometimes it happens certainly in a classroom. Um, Even when we are perhaps doing a character study and we look at why that character is shaped in the way he or she is shaped, and then we talk about the conditioning, and we see that in a piece of fiction, and we are able to see that even more clearly or with more clarity in our own lives. I think to be aware of the forces that are shaping us, one can be made conscious of that.
Yeah, I think we do various things, like the what you've given the webinar, you give an assembly on the same thing to make children more aware. We show them documentaries, like Social Dilemma, which makes these things much more clearer as to what's really happening. So at that one level, we are sort of trying to inquire into what's really happening to that. And at the other, the addiction and the drive to actually, how technology is so addictive. So, watching that inward movement as well as knowing from the outside what it's doing to us. I think both those things are really important. Yeah, this is, I think, a comment from the earlier question we talked about, what if AI is so efficient. So AI and machine learning is meant to increase efficiency in human endeavor in daily life in pursuit of making his life better and comfortable, which is confined within time and space. But K's whole approach is beyond time. But question is what we'll do with our time when we have plenty of free time. Right? So that's the question. What do we do when we have plenty of free time?
I don't know. People say that of the labor saving devices, that after we have had so many labor saving devices, we are having less leisure. That may be a tongue in cheek remark. But I think with a lot more choices, do we really have that time or leisure? I think the more we have of the machine doing our work, I think there is much more work and much less time. That is the reality, I think.
That's right. Yeah. Our lives actually, I mean, if you think about it, I think the leisure is actually becoming less. There's one more comment. The man who has invented computers struggling to make computers human, but persons using computers are trying to become computers. Krishnamurti is more relevant to know yourself.
Yes.
It's, from Vijeta. Thank you for the beautiful session. More than artificial, we definitely need to learn a little more of our own natural intelligence. And another one on a similar thing, human innovations are generally expected to simplify life and possibly save time. But in reality, we see that it is all going in the opposite direction. Life becoming faster with no time for oneself to look within. Is there a possibility that we can reverse this while not rejecting the double-edged technology as such? What role has education to play in this direction?
At the very beginning, I made a disclaimer that I really do not want to see the conversation go in the direction of whether AI is good or AI is not good. There are, I think, whether we like it or not, it is going to come into our lives. And it is going, for example, in medical diagnosis, it can be much more accurate, much more precise. That is not the direction of this conversation, I think. The direction is that in this age also, Krishnamurti is quite relevant. That is mainly the focus. And I think one other thing also came up in the chat, that is anybody uh, applying Krishnamurti, not exactly in the same words, but along the lines of those people in the AI, are they also looking at these? I think they are. In fact, one of our students, she has just completed her studies in Rishi Valley, and I think she's taking up a course in AI and ethics. So I think there is a felt need for this. And there will always be a felt need for this.
Yeah, right. There's one more. I mean, this is, of course, the direction in which AI is headed, where at some point, AI becoming sentient. Google claims that Google's AI machine Lambda is sentient. What are your thoughts on that? How would Krishnamurti look at this crucial moment in history? Uh, I think we really don't know where it's moving and what's going to happen. Almost entering a sci-fi movie. It seems like we are entering an age where things we've seen in sci-fi movies are becoming true. One practical kind of thing is there. Can we restrict effects of AI by reducing personal data sharing? I think it's important all of us do understand what we are selling when we are having free internet access. We are selling our data free of charge, and there are things one can do to reduce this data sharing, and should we be doing that as well? This is, I mean, somebody who's sort of mulling. It is interesting talk and quite informative, especially regarding Jackie's thoughts. On the other hand, I am wondering if it's an effort to maintain the relevance of JK by connecting his thoughts, words to AI. In terms of practical utility of this talk of almost an hour, how is it useful unless the teachings of JK reaches to those who are involved in developing AI?
I know. I have similar thoughts too. Like in an hour, how can you really bring the essence of Krishnamurti? We may sometimes, I'm not saying use buzzwords or something, that is not it. It's very difficult to have to discuss anything at length, but I think it creates an opening. I remember in one of our gatherings, Mr. Kandaswamy had said, and this also connects to what the student had said about it's only for the privilege, where he said it's not a nice breeze that you have which lulls you into a state of well-being. It is a gust of wind. It's a gust of strong wind that will shake you up in your own being. That is what he said. I remember he said this in one of the gatherings. So these webinars, I think, we cannot really go into it because Krishnamurti himself, his talks would go on for 1 or 2 hours on a singular subject. And it takes a lot of time. At least for me, I need to go through these talks 2 or 3. Every time I go through these talks, it opens up something inside. So to just do something within an hour, I think is beyond the scope, at least for me. But it does open up conversations. It does trigger some thoughts. And that may be an invitation to go and explore further. And many of these resources are open resources. And one could have a personal journey into it.
Yeah, there's one more here. Building inner strength is not about challenging the pace and direction of society, but in sailing through all the complexity and acceleration with the ability to empty oneself all the time. How to equip students with this ability, even as they develop contemporary skills, without resistance to them, is the challenge before educators, because this is so necessary for mental health and societal balance.
I think before we even think of educating the students, these are the same questions that face us too. So we are thinking about the transformation of students. I think there is a need for transformation of us educationists, adults, or in any walk of life. I think when it happens amongst us, then there is a likelihood that it could extend even to the children that are under our care.
This is more just I think, an inquiry into whether all this JK's work is available in his voice. There's a YouTube channel by the Krishnamurti Foundation. It's a huge amount of his original works there. If anybody is interested, they can always go and look on YouTube. Yeah, I think we've sort of covered all the sort of questions that have come up. Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you, everyone. I think, and it was nice chatting with all of you for an hour. And thank you, Jyoti, very much for this presentation. I think it was really through a very contemporary light on Krishnaji's teachings. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Tanujan. Thank you. It's always good to have these shared conversations.
Yeah. So we will end the webinar here.